Hi everyone, in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to create a seamless quatrefoil design in Affinity Designer for iPad. Now while I am teaching this on the iPad, if you're following along on the desktop, the process is the same. So if you know where the tools are located, you should be able to follow along. Are you ready? Let's get started. Now just like with any geometric design, there are numerous ways to create a quatrefoil motif, all of which are going to have a different outcome. In this lesson, I want to show you how to create an interlocking design like this one. In other words, one where each row fits nicely into the last one and additional shapes aren't created by the gaps between them. You'll also see this referred to as a Moroccan Trellis design. Now to do that, you need to use specific measurements for both the shapes that you use to create your motif, as well as the artboard itself. The shapes that you use are going to also determine whether you have a tall, skinny motif or a squatter, wider one. So let me show you what I mean. I like to create ones that are wider, so I'm going to use a 500 pixel ellipse and a 750 pixel rectangle to create my shape. And that's what I use to create the one on the right. But if I choose something like a 500 pixel ellipse and a 1000 pixel rectangle, I'm going to get a much taller motif like the one on the left. Both are interlocking, but the final result looks different. In addition to considering the shapes that you start with, you also need to set your canvas based on the size of the final motif that you end up with. So in this case, I'm going to end up with a motif that's 1000 by 1250 pixels. And if I want to be able to export a square canvas that's seamlessly tiled, I need to come up with a canvas size that both of those numbers divide into evenly while still maintaining a print-ready resolution. If I don't use a canvas that both divide into, I'm either going to end up with a non-seamless tiling on the X or the Y axis. I don't want to go below 3000 for my canvas size, and preferably I want to stay at 3600 pixels or above, because that's going to give me the most versatility with all of my print-on-demand sites. Now in this case, 1000 and 1250 both divide into 5000 equally, and that's pretty much the only number that I can use because there's nothing below that that both will divide into. I can always export the final tile at a lower resolution, but to create it, I need to set my artboard to at least 5000. So I'm setting up a 5000 square canvas at 300 dpi with a color format of RGB. I'm going to create 3 500 pixel ellipses and one 500 by 750 pixel rectangle. So I have my ellipse shape selected and I have my command controller engaged down here at the bottom right. If you don't have yours on, you can go to the Documents menu at the top and choose Toggle Command Controller. I'm going to run my finger across both Shift and Command until they're locked and just drag out an ellipse until it's 500 pixels. And it's always a good idea to check the size in the transform panel. You can see I went a little bit above. So I'm going to lock that and key in 500. I want to duplicate this twice. So I'll hold my finger down and duplicate it 2 times. I'll go over and grab my rectangle. And this time I want to drag out a 500 by 750 pixel rectangle. So again, I'll go to my transform panel. I'm going to unlock this time and key in 500 pixels on the width and 750 pixels on the height. I'm going to set these two aside for right now and grab these 2 ellipses first. I want to set them right next to one another. So with snapping on, I'm just going to snap this into place and you can see I get that red and green line that lets me know right where I'm supposed to be. I'm going to grab my rectangle with my move tool, drag it down here, and I want to place that in the middle. And again, with snapping on, you can see I get that green and red line. Now I need to create the peak at the top and the point at the bottom, and that's what this third ellipse is for. I need to break this up into 4 shapes, and in order to do that, I need to access the nodes. But right now, this is an ellipse and not a curve. So I'm going to hold my finger down with it selected, bring up the quick menu, and choose Convert to Curves. So now you can see I have 4 nodes. I'm going to drag across to select all 4 with my node tool. And I want to go up to the contextual menu at the top and choose Break Curve. That gives me 4 separate layers, and that's what I'm going to use to create the top and the bottom. I'm going to grab my Move tool again, and I'm going to drag to select these 2 at the top and move them here, and do the same thing with this and move it here. Now, if I select all 4 of these curves and go up to the top here and choose Flip Horizontal and Flip Vertical, it doesn't look like anything happened, and that's because it's flipping as a group and not as individual curves. In order to achieve that, I'm going to go to the arrow here and turn on transform separately. What that's going to do is put a bounding box around one of them, but it keeps all four selected. So now if I go up to the top here and choose flip horizontal and flip vertical, I get the point at the top and the point at the bottom, and I'm all set. I'm going to turn that back off because sometimes that can get in the way. Now that I have all my shapes in place, I want to combine them. So I'm going to use my move tool and just drag to select all of them. And I'll go to my shape builder tool. And I want to make sure that plus is on so that I add everything together. And with marquee selected, I'm going to drag across, release, and it's going to create one large shape. From here, I can change my fill and stroke. So I'm going to go to my color palette here, and I think I'm going to use this off-white color for my stroke. And I'm going to change the stroke size to 50. I want it to be a little bit thicker. And I'm also going to make the join pointed so that I don't have rounded edges there. And then I'm going to, for the fill, use this yellow color. Now I've selected these colors, but at this point I could turn this into a symbol so that I can make quick changes to one motif that are going to be applied to all after I tile this. So I'm going to select the shape, go to my symbols panel, and under the burger menu, I'm going to choose Add Symbol from Selection. To tile this, I'm going to drag this up to the top corner so that the bounding box is cut in half both vertically and horizontally. Now that means I am going to need to complete it on this side. So with that selected, I'm going to hold my finger down and duplicate. Now I could drag this manually, but I find it a lot more precise to use the transform panel. So I'm going to go to the transform panel and under the x-axis, key in plus 1000 because that's the width of my motif. Now, as long as I don't deselect my shape, I can hold my finger down to bring up the quick menu and keep choosing duplicate to power duplicate this across the canvas. With the first row in place, I want to duplicate one of the top ones here, and I'm just going to manually drag it in this case because with snapping on, it snaps very easily into place, and you can see I get those green and red lines. I'm going to deselect it and then select it again so it doesn't power duplicate it down and to the right. I'll hold my finger down and duplicate, and again, I could just move this to the right, and then from there, power duplicate to complete all of those gaps. With my first two rows in place, I'm going to group them up. So I can either hold my finger down and pull up the quick menu, or I can go to the layers and choose group. And then I'm going to duplicate this all the way down. So I'll hold my finger down and duplicate in the transform panel on the y-axis this time. I don't want to choose 1875, even though that's the height of this group, because if I do that, this is what happens. It's going to leave a gap, and that's not what I want. I actually want to move this entire group by the height of a single motif, which is 1250. So I'll go ahead and key in 1250, and now it locks right into place. And again, as long as I don't deselect this, I can power duplicate this all the way down until I complete the entire canvas. Now that gives me an extra row down here at the bottom. You could leave it if you want. I tend to clean mine up just so that I don't have anything stray off the canvas. So I'm going to ungroup this, and then with my move tool, just drag across that bottom one that's off the canvas and delete it. And then I can just go ahead and group this one back up. Now, before I do any recoloring, I want to test the pattern to make sure that it's working okay. I've set up this assets category called Pattern Hub, and this is where I keep things for bitmap fills that I've created. But at the very bottom, I've set up a subcategory called Testing. And this is where I add an artboard so that I can pull it in as a bitmap fill to test my designs. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my artboard layer. It's really important you select the artboard and not the layers underneath. I'll go to the assets under that subcategory, and I'm going to add asset from selection. And as soon as that's in place, I can add another artboard and test that. I'll go up to the top to the documents menu and choose artboards. And I'm going to click the plus sign to add one that's the same size as the existing document. I want to grab my gradient tool. I'll tap on that asset and set as fill. Now it looks just like the other one, but the benefit of doing it this way is that I can hold shift down on my command controller and scale down and just test to see if there's any issues with the tiling, which in this case there's not. I can also drag up and zoom in a lot further to see if there's any other issues. This looks fine, so I'm going to play around with the colors a bit. Now, if you recall, I turned my original motif into a symbol, which means that I can easily change the color of one of the motifs and change all of them at the same time. So if I go into my groups here and I select one of my curves, if I decide that I want to change the fill to something like this red color, it's going to change all. I can flip that so that my stroke is red and the fill is off-white. I can change the off-white to peach. Any changes that I make to the one are going to be made to all. In this case, I actually want to do something different. I'm going to bring it back to where it was. I want to use the vector flood fill tool to create a variation in my motifs. But in order to do that, I need to turn the symbols off, because otherwise, if I change one using the vector flood fill tool, it's going to change all. So I'll head to my symbols panel and I'm going to toggle off sync symbols. Now I do want to note, once I do this, if I toggle it back on, any attributes I change like fill while it's off are no longer going to be affected by the original symbol. So in other words, if I turn it off and I change the fill of select motifs here on my canvas, once I toggle that back on, any of those motifs that I touched are not going to be changed by the original symbol, specifically the fill. I can change anything else that I didn't touch, like the stroke color and width. So with that off, I'm going to select all of my groups so that all of my motifs are selected. And I'll choose the vector flood fill tool. And you can see that creates drop zones because I have all of my motifs selected. And that's what those blue lines are on the Quatrefoils. Now it's important you choose the tool first and then set your fill. The first time that you use it in a canvas, it's going to give you this bright red color. Subsequent times, it's going to give you whatever fill you used last. So I've selected the tool and I'm going to set my fill to this off-white color. And I want to make sure that wherever I'm randomly changing colors, if I change anything on the edges, I change the one on the opposite side of it, because remember, those complete one another. The same thing goes for the corners. If I change one corner, I need to change all of the corners to the same color. So I'm going to just start out with this off-white color, and I think I will change this one, which means I need to change this one. And I'll do this one and this one. I think I'm going to do these two. And here, maybe here, and then up here. It sounds kind of funny, but I'm trying to be random. I'm going to go ahead and grab another color. I'm actually going to speed this up, and I'll see you on the other side. Now that that's done, I can add the artboard to my assets again and scale down just to see how it looks. Whenever I create something like this where the colors are varied randomly, I like to test the design at a smaller scale just to make sure there's no clumping of certain colors or big pockets where the tiling is evident. So I'm going to select the artboard layer. I'll go to my assets and save this to the testing category. And then once that's in there, I can use that original artboard just to test this. So I'll move over here and grab my gradient tool, tap to add it, and I'm just going to scale this down. And I like how that looks. I think there's enough balance between the darks and the lights, and I don't see any clumping anywhere. So I'm going to call that done. If you have any questions or a suggestion for a tutorial that you'd like to see here on my channel, let me know in the comments below. If you like my teaching style, consider checking out my full-length classes either on Skillshare or my own learning site, The Creator Collage. I have lots more tutorials in the works and soon to be published. In the meantime, you might want to check out one of these two next. Thanks for watching.